First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers, Amravati Obstetric Gynec Association, AMOX, and Dr. Vandana Bansal in particular, Dr. Mundada also, for nobody has mentioned as yet that today is the Valentine's Day. So I'm talking about my second Valentine today, so for giving me opportunity, thank you very much. First Valentine, of course, you need not guess, but the second Valentine is giving lectures on genetics. So for giving me opportunity for giving lectures on genetics, I thank you. Second thing is that having a own laptop also has that clock. I did not know that. So actually the trick was to have my laptop was to omit that clock, but the clock is still there. So I have to finish within 15 minutes, I know. And so I'll be very short, I'll not be very technical. This talk is not just about karyotyping, because karyotyping, you know, regarding the chromosomes of the fetus, but there is something beyond karyotyping also, and there is a shortcut to karyotyping also, especially as far as aneuploidies is concerned. So I'll be talking about all these three things, that is karyotyping, microarray, and FISH or qPCR, as well as I'd like to make a difference here in comparing karyotyping with NIPT, because NIPT, though it is non-invasive, it is still not considered as diagnosis. So NIPT, you must remember, though it has got a very good negative predictive value, still it is a screening test. So karyotyping and NIPT you cannot compare, but you can use them together so that you can have clinical situations where you can both stand you in good stead. So in today's talk, what I will be talking about are the scopes and limitations of these various tests. I will not go into the technical jargon, but I'll just give a brief description so that you can get an idea. I'll be talking in a little more detail regarding the cell-free fetal DNA-based screening, which shortly is known as NIPS or NIPT or NIFT. I'll also compare their performance with your routine combined screening and as they stand in your clinical practice, which is to use and when, that is the topic of this talk. So you know this image of karyotype that we have in mind, but we must also remember that this is only possible during the metaphase stage of the cell division. So most of the times the chromosomes and the DNA, they are intermingled with each other. When we want to separate them, this is the time that we can separate them. So therefore there is some turnaround time, especially for CVS and amniocentesis, that is about 2 weeks on an average, and it requires a lot of expertise, it is labor intensive. Moreover, it detects only visible changes, that is numerical, that is number changes, that is aneuploidies. It detects structural abnormalities limited because the resolution is just limited to 5 MB and requires dividing cells. So culture has to be there. So to overcome this FISH test was developed where you can see the interface cell showing 2 signals each. This is a normal FISH signal. So a particular probe that is for that particular chromosome, like say 12 number, 30 number or 18 number or 21st, you can have a rapid numerical diagnosis, that is aneuploidy diagnosis. So this is available within 24 hours. Or this test can substitute this because this is known as qPCR, where again the numbers are measured. So in qPCR, what you get a quantitative detection of the number of chromosomes. So it allows for rapid detection. It is very accurate, and there is no subjective element which is required in case of FISH. So qPCR may, in later days, may replace this FISH for rapid aneuploidy testing. This is the new kid on the block, very promising, that is microarray. So the advantage of microarray is that it can be done on non-dividing cells also. Even in bad samples it can be done, plus it has got a very good resolution. So it can diagnose everything except for, say, translocations, but it can diagnose the unbalanced karyotype, and it can diagnose everything that is there in karyotype and go a little beyond that. So that is why it has been used extensively, and there are very good results in these very difficult cases in genetics, that is mental retardation or developmental delay, where it has shown that it goes beyond karyotype. So it can give a diagnosis, say, almost 15% more cases than the karyotype in case of all these difficult cases. So how we can go about in our fetal medicine as gynecologists, which is the test to use, FISH, karyotype or microarray. So for rapid aneuploidy diagnosis, you can have either FISH studies on your CVSS or amniotic fluid. For structural congenital abnormalities, where you get ultrasound evidence, you should not just stop at karyotype, because there can be something beyond that. So you can go in for microarray studies. Especially these abnormalities are suspected whenever the combined screen result is less than 1 in 100. So this is because studies have proved that it is worth and it takes more abnormalities than a routine karyotype. Now I'll come to the topic of interesting topic that must be to you, NIPT, NIPS or NIFT. I want you to note here that it does not mention NIPD. So it is non-invasive prenatal diagnosis. So this is one step where we can go into have a study of fetal DNA from maternal blood. This is not fetal DNA actually, but it is the trophoblastic cell DNA which are in contact with maternal blood, and some amount of that cells are coming into the maternal blood, giving rise to cell-free DNA. Most of the cell-free DNA that is outside the nucleus is actually of maternal origin. But beyond 10 weeks of pregnancy, satisfactory amount of fetal DNA can be there, which is of trophoblastic origin. As you all know that trophoblastic cells have got the same origin as the fetus in most of the cases, 98% of the cases. So it can represent the fetal DNA. So we can define NIPT as a screening test that utilizes, again the screening word is there, bioinformatic algorithms and next generation sequencing of fragments of cell-free fetal DNA in maternal serum to determine the probability of certain chromosome conditions of a pregnancy. That is the definition. Now I'll take back you to statistics, not a very difficult exercise, but by using these terms, that is sensitivity or detection rate. Especially you must have heard lots of lectures regarding maternal serum screening, where they mention regarding the sensitivity of the or detection rate for Down syndrome of that particular test. For example, first trimester screening, we say combined screening has got a detection rate of 80 to 85%. And this sensitivity or detection rate means that how many of the total cases there you're getting a screen positive. So that is your sensitivity. But beyond that, there is something which actually judges the test, that is a positive predictive value. That you may get a risk positive case, but out of these risk positive cases, how many of them are actually risk positive cases? So that is the positive predictive value. Negative predictive value, if you get a negative risk result, how many of them are really negative? How many of them are positives? So all these ratios are actually very important. I'll give you one example. For example, when we are studying a patient with fever and you are suspecting enteric fever, you do say blood culture of that particular patient, and what you get is, if you get a culture positive, then you definitely call it enteric fever. But that how many cases are culture positive? So few cases are culture positive. It's not a very sensitive test, but the positive predictive value of blood culture is very high. So 100% of cases which are blood culture positive are bound to be enteric fever, especially in presence of fever. So consider our karyotype of microarray diagnosis for aneuploidies. So sensitivity for that particular test has to be 100%, because whenever it is there, it will detect it. Second thing, positive predictive value. Once you have got a diagnosis of Down syndrome on a fetal sample, then it has got to be Down syndrome. It can be anything else. Negative predictive value. If you are ruling out by culture that it is not Down syndrome, then the negative predictive value is also 100%. So this is a very good test. So that is why it is used in diagnosis. I'll talk about a very elegant study here, and I'll compare it with combined screening, and you can yourself compare it with aneuploidy, the NIPT part of my lecture. So you'll see here in this particular study, almost 16,000 maternal samples were studied. So out of the 16,000 samples, the true positive cases were 38. You can see there in the second column. So all Down syndrome cases in this study were detected by our NIPT. The true positive cases for combined screening was thus 30%. But how many were positive? So the screen positive, there are almost 850 cases. So out of 850 cases, only 30 cases were actual Down syndrome. So the amniocentesis was done for 850 cases, but still only 30 cases were Down syndrome. So you can see here that a positive predictive value, sometimes you call it false positive rate also, positive predictive value of a combined screening is just 3.5% in this particular study. While the positive predictive value in case of all patients, in case of cell-free DNA study, that is NIPT, out of, say, there were only 9 false positive cases. So if you consider this 9 false positive, the positive predictive value of NIPT is 80%. It is approaching 100%, but it is not 100%, it is just 80%. If you consider only mothers who are above 35 years of age, here the positive predictive value is 76%. So as your selection goes towards the high risk, the positive predictive values have fallen here. If you consider low risk cases only, that is, you exclude the combined screen result cases, though 850 cases, if you exclude them, then the positive predictive value is 8 cases were diagnosed. So all 100 cases were diagnosed, but 8 were false positive. So that means that the positive predictive value of NIPT in that particular situation, where only low risk results were there, was just 50%. So that is why NIPT or NIPS presently is recommended that it is to be used as screening test and not a diagnostic test. Now let us come to the performance regarding other aneuploids. Again here you will see that the performance is much better as far as combined screening is concerned in case of trisomy 13 or trisomy 18, but still the positive predictive value is not 100%. I must mention here that negative predictive value for NIPT for Down syndrome as well as trisomy 18, trisomy 13 is 100%. That means that if you get a negative result, which is a low risk result, then you can be almost 100%. I always say when counseling patient almost 100% because anything can happen in medicine. Now let us see what are the problems that we may encounter with NIPT. So NIPT, there can be too little fetal DNA if you are sampling very early. So NIPT actually has a sufficient amount of fetal DNA beyond 20 weeks of pregnancy. If mother is obese, obviously she has got a larger blood volume. The placenta is producing the same amount of cell-free fetal DNA. So there will be low amount of cell-free fetal DNA. So good labs, what they do is that they examine the fetal DNA. If the percentage is satisfactory, then only they proceed with further with the test, because if it is not satisfactory, then what happens is that you get a very borderline results or not very sensitive results, and then they are very difficult to interpret. So this is excluded right at the start. Second thing is the mosaicism confined to the fetus. We discussed that, what is that later on. Placental mosaicism and other conditions are responsible for false positive NIPS. So what's mosaicism? Mosaicism means that the placental cells and fetal cells are having different types of chromosomes. So fetus may be having normal chromosomes, but the placental cells may be showing your trisomy 21. So this is possible in 1 to 2% of cases. That is why whatever results you get on NIPT, even though they are high risk, you must confirm them with your amniocentesis or invasive method. Second thing, this fetal mosaicism, it's a rare entity where fetus is normal, is having Down syndrome, but the placental cells are not showing it. So this can be cause a negative NIPT. Metal mosaicism is where the mother is having, say, triple X syndrome or something. In that particular case, what you will get is a false sex chromosomal aneuploidy result with NIPS. Vanishing twin, so twin pregnancies are very common, and vanishing twin also is a common entity. So it has been seen that 15% of all unmatched results that were there in case of NIPT were because of vanishing twin. So you must scan all your report if a patient coming to you. What I do is that I scan all the ultrasound reports right from the start of pregnancy to see whether there was any evidence of vanishing twin. It is said that it takes almost 6 to 8 weeks for the DNA to disappear from maternal blood if the twin, that second twin demise has occurred. So this is an entity you must watch for. And as I said, mother matters too. So this may be because of maternal sex chromosome aneuploidy, so you may get a false positive result for XXY or triple X or something, or you may get double aneuploidy or some very ambiguous results in case of maternal malignancy, because those particular cells will be giving you cell-free fetal DNA, giving rise to the false double aneuploidy, very complex results. Now we'll compare here whatever options that are available here. We actually, these are, as I said, these are like chalk and cheese. So we should not compare the diagnostic methods with the screening methods. But here you see that the attractive part about NIPT is that it does not involve any loss to pregnancy. Now previously when I was a resident, we are being taught that the loss rate for amniocentesis is something like 0.5%. But now lots of audits have proved that it's quite safe in the condition. The CVS rate may be a little higher, but these are quite safe procedures. So whenever we want to go in for them, we must go in for them. The diagnostic procedures. NIPT also has got certain failure rate, and that has got to be explained to the patient before going in for NIPT. For fetal medicine specialists, the last fees in dollars must be very attractive, but such sort of costs are not there in our country, so they may not be, we are not earning in dollars, but we are earning rupees. the cost of NIPT is coming down, down, and down. So maybe one day will come that NIPT will be used as a screening test, but still combined screen has got lots of other advantages, as Dr. Pratima and other speakers have mentioned to you. So they can have lots of other prediction values also, and more prediction diseases will be coming. So this is why this is the comparison that we have. So what we do? So American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology started with this guidelines. As I started with these guidelines, that NIPT, they said initially, should be used in case of high-risk results. And these high-risk situations where, say, mothers were 35, or we were having combined screen results more than that, or having a Robertson translocation or something, previous history of Down syndrome because they have got little high risk. Then now they come to that every pregnancy can be screened because they have seen the value of screening in case of NIPS. But what they have said, and this we must follow in our practice, is that pre-test counseling for NIPS is a must. Because NIPS, it has got a higher cost, plus people have got lots of expectations out of it. So we must tell patient that the cell-free fetal DNA, though it is quite accurate screening, false positive and false negative results can be there. We must explain to them that second test may be required in case of high-risk result is there, and it cannot judge everything. Sonography does not have any other alternative, so patient has to follow up with sonography for the monitoring of the pregnancy. So limitations of the test must be clearly explained to the patient. Now these are the various societies: American Society of Human Genetics, European Society, College of Medical Genetics. Everybody has got their own view of looking at NIPT or NIPS, but most of them have now come to consensus that NIPS can be used. It can be used, according to some societies, as first-line test. There is a little bit of debate that is going on regarding other conditions, like microdeletion syndromes or something, how it can be used. One which I like is Swedish Society for Obstetrics and Gynecology, because this can be followed in our country also. So they have divided the combined skin population to 3 categories. One which is having risk less than 1 in 50, because they are more likely to have chromosomal abnormalities. So you should proceed with direct chromosome testing with CVS or amniocentesis, and you should not just stop at FISH or microarray, FISH or rapid detection, but instead of karyotyping, you may go on to actually having a microarray study, because we have seen that it can detect whatever karyotyping is detecting, but go a little beyond in detecting other abnormalities also. Whenever cup pressure combined skin possibility risk is between 1,000 and 1 in 51, then you should go in for NIPS. And when the combined skin risk is less than between the 1,000, you can follow up the pregnancy sonographically. So just in conclusion, I'll give this take-home messages. First trimester combined skin should be offered to all pregnancies in our country. Risk result of 1 in 100. I've taken the limit here as 1 in 100 because we can give some benefit to mothers also. Should undergo invasive prenatal cytogenetic analysis with rapid testing and microarray. The in-between result should have NIPS, but after counseling. All positive NIPS should be confirmed with invasive fetal diagnosis. Gold standard and diagnostic method is still cytogenetic analysis with amniocentesis of CVS. Mothers over 35, you can offer NIPS directly as a frontline test. USG showing structural abnormalities, especially when multiple, should be offered microarray. All NIPS should have pre and post test counseling and explain the results, sensitivity, positive predictive value as well as negative predictive value. If mother wants to have NIPS, she should be explained performance of NIPS in low risk situations along with other features, and NIPS is done in place where metal serum, it should be clearly explained that it does not replace ultrasonographic monitoring. Thank you.